Stand up.
From a defabricated solar-powered garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to go easy on that cheese plate at work while managing your lactose intolerance. And now, the podcast host who's got the stomach to handle just about any kind of food because who cares about flatulence anyways? Pete Dominic!
Oh, thank you very much, Pete Co, for yet another wonderful, thoughtful introduction. And yeah, I mean, listen, I work alone. I can do whatever needs to be done to release the valve, to let go some gas, and it's a wonderful existence. So thank you very much, folks, for pressing play on today's Stand Up with Pete Dominic. Sorry that I'm late. I was at I think almost 3-hour town hall meeting where I spoke with a whole bunch of other really enraged residents of my town because our town supervisor, George Homan is his name, has decided he used to like term limits, but now that he is term limited out, he would like to lift term limits. And 2 of the 5 people on the town council, one a Republican, another a Democrat, have said, no, you can't do that. You got to stick to what you agreed to 4 years ago. And he said, well, you know what? Then how about I redistrict the town to put the 2 people on the town council that aren't going to vote to get rid of term limits against each other in the same district, thus eliminating my problem. That's right. Partisan gerrymandering in a small town. Well, not a small town. I mean, it's a pretty big town, but at a town level to affect the outcome of the election and get rid of term limits and allow him to stay in charge indefinitely. Because as he well knows, because he made a speech about it, when you are an incumbent, you have an advantage of being reelected. It's a real mess in Clarkstown, New York, and I went out to speak out against it with a whole bunch of other members of my town, but yet they voted for it anyway. So that's where we're at in our town. How you doing in your neck of the woods, as a legend Al Roker would say. I have an excellent show for you today. Wajahat Ali and S.E. Cupp joined me. I sat down with both of them yesterday before the State of the Union, which I did not watch, have read about, seen some clips. But the overwhelming reaction that I saw seemed to be that it was a pretty good speech for old Joe Biden, for old Dark Brandon. Rex Hupke at USA Today, an opinion columnist, says Dark Brandon shows up at State of the Union, mops the floor with lost Republicans. Biden went off script regularly, parrying GOP lawmakers who heckled him, at one point backing the party into a corner and getting them to swear to protect Medicare and Social Security benefits. He writes, President Joe Biden, at the ripe age of 80, came out with ample vim and vigor in Tuesday night's State of the Union address and proceeded to mop the House floor with the howling, discombobulated remains of the Republican Party, preaching populism and leaning hard on his noted skill as empathizer-in-chief. Biden bounded through a speech that acknowledged the nation's struggles while remaining unerringly optimistic. He goes on to write, I've never seen anything like it in a State of the Union speech. They ran at him like a pack of lemmings, and with a wink and a grin, he politely directed them to the cliff. All right, well, Rex Hupke in USA Today, what did you think? If you watched it, we'll talk about it at the Hangout tomorrow night, I'm sure, and so much more. So sign up for a paid subscription if you haven't already, and you can join us at the Stand Up with Pete Dominic Thursday night Hangout that we've been doing for almost 3 years. I hope to see you there. Go to standupwithpete.com right now if you haven't already. All right, what else is happening before I get to my guests? Well, of course, the horrific earthquake in Syria and Turkey. One figure I'm seeing is 7,700 dead. 5,000 buildings collapsed. I'll talk about it with S.E. Cupp, who is on the board of an amazing organization, human rights and relief organization, Inara, Inara.org. That's coming up. Over on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans are eating each other alive. Now, Donald Trump, former disgraced president, is attacking Ron DeSantis and saying he's a pedophile and a groomer. So that's pretty wonderful to watch unfold. For his part, DeSantis is mostly staying above Donald Trump and basically launching his own what looks like a media outlet. It looks like he's pretending to be a pundit now on the set of a show. I saw that yesterday, and it was deeply disconcerting. It said he's hosting a roundtable discussion on legacy media defamation practices, but there he was sitting on a soundstage, a TV set that looked like it cost a lot of money, and looking part governor, part pundit. So that'll be interesting to see unfold over the next year, the fight between Trump and anybody who looks like they're challenging him, because clearly he's going scorched earth. Trump also gave like a 2-minute speech, reaction to the State of the Union, and literally said, "I'm a victim." He said that, which is interesting because folks who are on the right and lean right usually really don't like that kind of talk, much as admitting that you're a victim. Weak sauce. Okay. LeBron James broke the record for most career points in NBA history. I really don't normally do sports updates or headlines, but thought that was interesting. Oh, and the only other thing I wanted to mention that I saw really tearing up the social media was yesterday. Joe Rogan, one of the most popular podcasters in the world, is being slammed for saying that Jewish people are, quote, into money during a discussion on the most recent episode of his podcast.
She's apologizing for talking about it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
Which is just about money. She's talking about money.
She shouldn't have apologized.
I'll go ahead and say not an anti-Semitic statement. I don't think that is. It's about Benjamins or money. You know, the idea that Jewish people are not into money is ridiculous.
Listen.
That's like saying Italians aren't into pizza. It's fucking stupid.
Listen.
It's fucking stupid.
I understand that.
She's...
Pretty crazy moment. I said, listen, I'm defending Ilhan Omar. I don't think what she said was anti-Semitic. But you know what is anti-Semitic? What I'm about to say. That's what I heard, at least. Jews are really into money. You know what? Last I checked, humans are really into money. It's problematic, to say the least. It's insidious and disgusting, really. But, I'll just speak for myself. You know who's really into money? Italians. I have Italian members of my family that haven't talked to each other for like 40 years over $50. So I don't think it's a Jewish thing, that everybody's into money of different ethnic groups. And it's a real pernicious, insidious idea because of the horror that has occurred against folks who identify as Jewish for memes and stereotypes like that one that Joe Rogan is spreading. A real boneheaded, dumb thing to say on his show. Will there be any backlash at Spotify? Doubtful. All right, just a few headlines and comments here at the top. But now it's time to get to my guest, shall we? All right, coming up at 41 minutes in, starts in the 41st minute. I'll be talking with S.E. Cupp of CNN. But first, I've got the great Wajahat Ali, who's a columnist at the Daily Beast, a senior fellow at the Western States Center and Auburn Seminary. He's previously been a New York Times contributing op-ed writer, CNN commentator, co-host of Al Jazeera America's The Stream. He's also a recovering attorney and playwright. Currently, his book, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American, is out in paperback. You should definitely go get that. He's a great dad, a great husband, a great friend, and I'm really happy whenever he joins me for a conversation. And usually with Waj and a few others, when they punch into the video app that I use, StreamYard, which is just like Zoom, as soon as they show up, I'm recording. Yesterday was no exception to that. I was wearing an LL Bean sweatshirt or pullover, and he right away went in on me. And let's just get it started because I love this man. I think he's hilarious. We had a great talk. Let's do it. Follow him on Twitter. Go get his book. Listen to him here. Wajahat Ali.
I feel like you should be an LL Bean spokesman. I feel like this is like prime LL Bean advertising space on the Pete Dominic show.
I don't think I look rugged. I think there's something about bald-headed, bearded men that just doesn't scream out in age. It's more like anything like angry Steve Austin, Stone Cold.
I feel like you're kind of like, instead of being the rugged white outdoor enthusiast that we'd encounter in Colorado, you're kind of like the surly older white man who goes for a walk.
Yes. I was wondering where you'd go. I just didn't think you get so close to what I think how people see me.
It's like a 5:20 p.m.
Yeah.
It's a bit frosty. It isn't completely dark, and you need to take a walk around the park. And you take a walk, muttering to yourself, and you come back wearing the L Bean outlet fleece. That's exactly the vibe that you're giving off, which is a very good vibe that I empathize with because it's my vibe.
Yeah, well, it's me. I walk that dog almost every day, and at times I am definitely surly,
muttering to yourself, and then like people are like the youngins are like, oh, there goes that slightly terrifying old man.
I have a weird thing about walking where I'm very antisocial when I'm out walking, and it's not because I don't love people. I love people, and including strangers. Like I'm probably likely to talk to somebody, say at the grocery store, more than other people or something. But like when I'm walking, I'm kind of meditating, or I'm in my mind thinking about ideas, and I have an agenda, and I just don't love to stop and talk with people, and it comes off as very rude. Where are you?
I'm a saunterer because I'm from California, so I think like a New Yorker and I talk fast like a New Yorker, but I walk like a Californian. But I'm like you. I get in my zone. But I'll give the drive-by salam. I'll give the drive-by hello and the nod.
Yeah.
And, but like, if I'm in my sauntering mood, just like you, don't interrupt me to like speak longer than 3 seconds or maybe 4.
I use my headphones on a walk the way an attractive woman does at the gym.
Yes, to avoid surly, lustful men like you and me.
I'm busy.
Can I tell you what happened? So I have this creeper face that I do for my wife, which she says is like the creepiest face a man can make, that I don't make and have not made towards women. But like sometimes when I'm in the zone, I apparently just stare and do it. And she goes, that is by far the creepiest face ever. And I take immense pride in this face. So I was running at the gym, doing my old man run with my headphones on, not realizing I was completely zoned out, looking in like at 3 o'clock direction. And then I got out of it. And then there's this like really beautiful woman staring at me, and she rolls her eyes, shakes her head, and looks away because it seemed from her perspective that I was lustfully looking at her. But I wasn't at all. But I was just like kind of amazed that my look was so potent and disgusting that it made this woman literally take her eyes all the way back in their head, shake her head, and just look away with her headphones on. So it worked. But at the same time, I felt like I have reached this moment in my life, Pete, where I am that creepy old uncle if I wanted to be.
Yeah. No, I got there a few years ago. I know exactly what you're going through.
Yeah. And then it's kind of like humbling too, because you're like, oh, we've become that guy.
Yeah.
Like you can't even like do like a one look. You can't even like do like a 2-second, oh, there's an attractive woman. You have to be like, oh, you're like old enough to be her dad. You're like that weird guy walking down the street.
I realized recently that the gap between us and our kids is larger than the gap between any other 2 generations ever, in America and probably everywhere else, because our generation was the one before phones, or we straddled mobile phones and the internet, and our kids grew up with screens and the internet and social media. And when we think about, oh, we're going to be, look old, like old people, not understanding or speaking in a way like we couldn't be probably more pronounced, sadly, if that's not where you're trying to be in this generation, because our kids are growing up in a way they don't, they have screens everywhere.
Yeah, we're like these antiquated beasts of molding flesh that they look at with pity and contempt.
Yes.
Right? You're just like...
Well, that was always true, but we did that to our elders probably to some extent too, but now it's more like...
It's more pronounced. It's on steroids.
There's got to be a better way of saying it. I mean, we look so like different species to them, increasingly so. And, I'll get a text from my daughter. It's just acronyms, like several I'm like, does that mean come pick you up?
Acronyms and emojis.
Yeah. WILY, hashtag ILI, hashtag SMG. Do you need a ride? Like, are you in danger? I don't know what any of that means.
And then there's like, just to mess with you, she'll put like an eggplant. You're like, what?
ISTG is what I got today. And what
does that mean? I don't know what that means.
I swear to God.
Oh, good. See, look, I had no idea. And you know what it is interesting? It's so pronounced because we are of that generation where we remember the old Spartan men and women who didn't have smartphones. And I remember, this is how old you are when you say stuff like I remember, that we used to leave voicemails to each other. But now I've learned that voicemail is like an insult. Like if you leave a voicemail to someone, they're like deeply insulted. Like, why didn't you just text?
It's like
you made me go to my voicemail box.
It's like you gave me more work to do.
It's like you gave me herpes, bastard.
I don't. Jeez. Don't ever leave Waj voicemail. Holy note to self. I wasn't even, I feel like you really escalated that, but okay.
I left someone a voicemail. They got like very offended. Like, you could have just texted that. I'm like, I wanted to be an old school human and connect with you and like leave my voice. I thought it would be like a compliment, but apparently I'm sorry.
I left you a voicemail. Might as well just kill my wife. Jesus. Wow. It was a voicemail. It was a thoughtful message.
And now it's going to be like, you use complete sentences, you bastard.
Yes. Right. Yes. Why are you communicating in full sentences in that way? I don't understand it. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Let me ask you, since we've clearly begun, you've had a lot of advice for the president about the State of the Union, which will be over by the time most people hear this.
Excuse me. So too.
Yes. The so too. ISTG, SOTU. Thanks for joining me. People will have already seen it, so I don't think he's going to take your advice and go be as divisive as you say he should be.
Yeah, unfortunately, in a couple hours there'll be the State of the Union. Joe Biden is most likely going to run for president again in 2024. Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, who is a spineless amoeba of a man who has completely capitulated to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, as of yesterday, on Monday, was presiding over the House. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene was presiding over the House meeting yesterday. That actually happened. He has requested Joe Biden not be divisive, and he has requested that Joe Biden not attack MAGA. And it seems that Joe Biden will, of course, oblige, because Joe Biden has been in the Senate for like 95 years, and he still believes in bipartisanship, even though he's dealing with a Republican Party that calls Democrats groomers and pedophiles and is escalating violence against the spouses of Democrats and is using conspiracy theories and is still supporting a violent insurrection. But Joe Biden and Democrats are expected to be civil. And furthermore, you will see that there's good news for Joe Biden with the economy. And as of today, Jerome Powell said that the risks of inflation have been reduced. Yet an ABC poll, Pete, that was released yesterday says that a majority of Americans don't really know what Joe Biden has done for them.
Yeah.
And according to that poll, Trump is beating Biden by 2 percentage points. And what I say is the Democrats keep making the mistake of never wanting to ever engage in the culture war because they're terrified of pissing off Bubba and Chet and Travis in the Rust Belt. And I ask you, how do you win a culture war if you're not going to fight?
Yeah.
And we're in the shortest month of the year, Black History Month, in February. And as this is happening, Pete, news came out this week, right before the State of the Union. Just yesterday, we found out that Republican-appointed judges are going to try to block the abortion bill nationwide. Republicans have already taken away abortion rights. They are banning books and they're banning African-American studies openly. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is a clear opening for Democrats to attack. Joe Biden can take the pulpit and flex. He can be like, yo, I'm the one who saved the economy. I'm the one who passed the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm the one who passed the infrastructure bill. I'm the one trying to save Social Security and Medicare. Guess what the Republicans here are doing? They're trying to hijack the debt ceiling to make cuts to Social Security and Medicare. We believe in books. They're banning books. We believe in celebrating African Americans. They believe in banning and shutting down your voices. We believe in expanding women's rights. They're about to pass. This judge is about to do a ruling which could potentially do a nationwide block on abortion pills. What I have said, Pete, in the summer, and I was right, but I'm crazy, is that defense of democracy, defense of women's rights, defense of books are kitchen table issues. We remember, if you go back last year, the Democrats are like, no, don't talk about these things. Talk about the economy. Top 5 issue that motivated voters, Pete, in 2022, that allowed Democrats to keep the Senate. Defense of democracy, women's rights. And according to the polls, about 70 to 80% of Americans are against book bans. So what are Democrats going to do, apparently? not be divisive, not be aggressive, and concentrate only on the economy. So awesome.
I think that one of the problems, I was trying to understand why so few people understand the accomplishments of the Biden administration. And I'm sure it's just our media and that we're so siloed by it. And even the mainstream progressive media, it's not necessarily there to be touting the accomplishments all the time. But they do. And how is it that a politician or an administration is supposed to, be touting and bragging about their accomplishments? We could talk about that. But the bottom line is certainly a lot of people, not only do they not hear about the good things and the accomplishments, they blame every bad thing on the president. And then they say things, obviously, that are completely untrue about him, that he's in cahoots with the Chinese or any number of things about his corruption and so on. So it's a certain percentage of Americans are just never going to get the message. And you would hope that they might see the message. They might see things being rebuilt, or that their benefits are coming in. Inflation is coming down. Gas is coming down. The job numbers, you would think they would see them and feel them, but it's not necessarily happening because we're so divided even in our media silos, is what I would submit. Otherwise, I'm not sure what they should do or what they can do to get through to to most Americans, their accomplishments.
You have to fight back, right? Look, perfect. You're absolutely right. And I knew we were going to get to that. Look at the Chinese spy balloon has dominated the news, right? And media is responsible for that. Media hasn't given context. And instead of talking about how the infrastructure bill and how the Inflation Reduction Act has actually helped, actually reporting on this news, it's the Chinese spy balloon. And the bad faith right-wing talking points run the news, right? So I gave some advice to Joe Biden that he won't follow. What I would say is we protect Americans. We protect democracy, both here and abroad. Some people try to do violent insurrections. We're against violent insurrections. Some people support Russia. We're against Russian invasion, right? And we stand up to China, and I exploded the balloon. I actually pay taxes in America, unlike Trump, who actually pays taxes to China, right? That's a talking point. If the president says it, it's going to become news. Here's another example. When Joe Biden at a fundraiser in Maryland said that he believes MAGA is a semi-fascist movement, that became the talking point. That became the news. And all these other folks were like, oh, it's so divisive. But guess what, Pete? It mobilized the base. Like, damn right, that's a semi-fascist movement. And now the president is normalizing and mainstreaming a media talking point. And now he's attaching semi-fascism. I think you and I agreed that he can just drop the semi to MAGA, and then that leads the news. So if the president doesn't say it, if the president doesn't articulate and communicate the message, you can't blame the media, right? You have to know how the media works. It's wag the dog. Bannon, as I've said on your show before, and even Trump, they have openly said, our enemy isn't the Democrats. Bannon said our enemy is the media. And he says you have to flood the zone with shit. And Trump is a master manipulator of the media. The problem with Democrats is they go too high and too cerebral. You're dealing with an ecosystem of outrage, propaganda, fight, like with WWF, and you need to engage in it. So you flex and tout your accomplishments, but then you contrast it with Republicans. You flex and you punch. You flex and you punch. So that Americans have a clear understanding. Oh, shit. Republicans are coming after my Social Security. They want to increase my taxes. They want to cut taxes for the rich. They want to ban books. Oh, Biden wants to support Social Security. I'll vote for Biden. They don't do the second part. They don't do the contrast.
When you're talking about this now, and then you tweeted something similar about how Biden and Democrats it's making me think that maybe you even got it from this because it was so effective and went really viral, was the Hakeem Jeffries rant where on the House floor a couple weeks ago, where he said Republicans want to cut Medicare, we want to save Medicare. Republicans, what they want to, and he just kept going back and forth and doing it. Sounds like what you're saying right there in that speech, and it really went viral.
I mean, he gets it, right? He has the ability to flex. But look, it goes back to the summer, and it's the people of color oftentimes who have to engage in the culture war because this affects us in our communities, right? There was one, and Hakeem Jeffries is black. Let's not forget.
People of color also, for specifically certainly black folks, deliver this stuff it's almost like, this is going to almost sound racist, but it's almost like it comes more natural as a performer. Like you think about so many of these speakers that politicians from Obama to even AOC, much less Hakeem Jeffries and others, and they give these speeches almost like they're in a black church in a pulpit.
Well, that's exactly it.
And you don't see that nearly as effectively. I mean, someone like maybe Jamie Raskin comes to mind is effective in certain moments, but there's a lot of bumbling white fucks. And
yeah, it's the call and response from the black church.
Yeah.
And also, you know, specifically from even like Bill Clinton used to do that, right? Knowing the church going American, right? The congregation, getting people passionate,
good point. Clinton
inspiring them, riling them up, giving them hope, but then also attacking the enemy and like saying, this is the problem, you know? So it's that type of call and response. And you saw specifically with Obama, the point I was trying to make is the reason why he couldn't avoid the culture war, Pete, is because he's black.
Right.
So that's why he had to confront it. And he confronted the race and class narrative, brought people together, created an image of a multicultural America, hope and change, put himself in the front and center as the part of that narrative. But now you have Biden, old, like you said, bumbling white guy who's been in friggin' Senate for 95 years. And then when quote unquote dark, I'm the one who's been saying it on your show. And look, it's like one of those things where you just want to bang your head against the wall because he was rewarded for being dark Brandon. He was rewarded. His base is like, yes, you called him semi-fascist. Finally, you fought back. Finally, you showed some passion on abortion rights. Finally, you started to, I gave this essay. I wrote this essay for Daily Beast last summer. I said, hey, Democrats, here's an easy win. Why don't you cut ads literally using the words of Lindsey Graham and Republicans openly bragging about cutting Social Security and Medicare? And then finally they started doing, and guess what happened? Enough old voters are like, holy shit, Republicans are going after my Social Security and Medicare. I'll vote for Democrat. So it's one of those situations where I think they get so far into their head and they get so far into these polls and data given to them by these moderate Democrats who are paid a lot of money to be wrong, that they sometimes forget common sense and they sometimes forget their own base, people of color who show up for them. And they lack this connection to the grassroots where, like you said, this call and response from the black church works to invigorate and capture your audience. If you're just sitting there listing your accomplishments, people doze off, they get bored, and no one wants to hear an Excel sheet. They want to hear passionate stories that involve human beings and incite emotion. That's what works.
I wanted to change gears and just ask you about another news story that, I mean, I hate to do this. It seems so hacky, but yesterday, the headline was that two brown-skinned, Arab-named people are accused of plotting to target Maryland power stations and basically turn off Baltimore. The news cycle and the reaction to those two Muslims, let's say they were Muslims, let's say they were aligned with some extremist group, anti-American terrorist group, the reaction in the news cycle would have been so much different than it has been since this story broke yesterday, because the real story is duo accused of neo-Nazi plot to target Maryland power stations. Adam Waffen founder Brandon Russell and Sarah Clendaniel allegedly sought to attack substations around Baltimore. A neo-Nazi leader recently released from prison, the story begins, is accused of plotting an attack on the Maryland power grid with a woman he met while incarcerated. First, Waj, where are you on the Adam Waffen? Pro or con?
You know, I need to see more evidence on the Adam Waffen. You know, I think it's been, you know, maybe they've
unrightly demonized,
changed their ways. You know, maybe this is like a rebooted version.
Maybe this new Adam Waffen is different, and
maybe they have natty haircuts and you know, wear better shoes. You know, shoes that aren't meant for stomping, but you know, are actually for you know, comforting. Uggs. Yeah, just comforting to their souls. SOLES and their SOULS. So I'm on the fence. I'll give them a shot. But you know, if you're a student of history, neo-Nazis, Pete, kind of don't like people who aren't white. I think that's one of their things, like white supremacy. Just putting it out there, you know, I don't want to be judgmental. And so when you have two neo-Nazis, and I'm glad you shared that because I shared that article and I was about to say, like I usually do, imagine two Muslims, but I was just so jaded by it. I'm like, F it. I'll just share this story. And look, no one's talking about it. Came out in the New York Times, two neo-Nazis who literally plotted to take out the friggin' electrical grid of Maryland, and no one talks about it. And the number one domestic terror threat in 2023 America, as it has been for the past several years, is white supremacist terrorism. And, you know, while I was reading this article yesterday, I was thinking to myself, nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about that the number one domestic terror threat is neo-Nazis, and that they're increasingly aligned with members of the GOP. And this is just fine. Like no one cares. And I was thinking about it, like, can you imagine, and I've said this before on your show, if a bunch of Muslims did January 6th, what would happen to our communities, man? We don't have to imagine. We saw the War on Terror. It'd be the sequel, like War on Terror harder.
It was such a cross-section. I watched the HBO January 6th documentary a couple weeks ago, so it's just fresh in my mind. But it was really such a cross-section of white people across America, all kinds, all types of whites. There were a few people of color sprinkled in, but the vast majority, certainly the organizers and leaders of obviously, and they were from all kind of walks, but they were more likely well off. But they were a lot of America. White America was really represented there, and we should never stop talking about it, because not to score points, but to just make people aware of who's likely in their communities and in their neighborhood, and that we sadly have to be vigilant for these types of folks, because looking at that, I just reshared it while we're talking, saying, thank God your tweet about the neo-Nazis, thank God they weren't foreign terrorists. The truth is, foreign terrorists are so much easier to defend against. Period. Yeah,
it gives you an easy boogeyman, right? Osama, ISIS. You have a villain that is completely dehumanized that you can use to then attack all brown and black folks and Muslimy folks. But when the terrorist is domestic, this is what happens. Even in the media. Oh, well, I have a grandfather. He's a nice guy. Yeah, he says some racist stuff. Oh, that person looks like my uncle. That person looks like my cousin. You humanize them. The stories about like the mass shooter next door, he was a quiet person, a lone wolf. And as such, because these folks resemble many of the people that are in power, and because unfortunately they share some of the same politics, we give them excuses. Instead of, aggressively attacking them, we infantilize them. We say that they have economic anxiety. And we say, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, oh, they're political prisoners. She actually said that some of these folks are political prisoners. And so this is what happens is when you normalize terrorism. It's called terrorism, Pete. And when it's, a terrorist is only a terrorist if it's black or brown skin. If it's a white man, he's an aggrieved individual who's suffering from economic anxiety, and we should bend the knee to accommodate him and his problems in life. And maybe, just maybe, then he will cease being an aggrieved violent extremist. But lo and behold, fast forward 7 years after Trump, and they have only doubled down on their extremism and hate. And this is why, tying things up, going full circle. And Joe Biden has seen enough. What more do you need to see in 2023? They hate you, Joe Biden. You cannot win them over. Win over the moderates, win over some of the people on the fence, win over some of the non-MAGA Republicans. But I think the framing of MAGA Republicans is very smart. He gives an olive branch to the Republicans who are sick and tired of Trump, wins them over, and I think that can shift some elections, right? Smart politics. You want to keep adding on to the numbers, but then you attack the enemy, you name them, you message, you tell the people who's the good guy and the bad guy, you frame the narrative, and then you sell the narrative. If you can't do it, don't be surprised if Chinese mother effing spy balloon dominates. Yeah. That's a fail on Democrats. I hope to God that some people are giving him the good advice, but I feel like, unfortunately, he's going to try to be the quote-unquote uniter and just allow them to step on his face. I hope I'm wrong.
We've been mostly talking about Biden. What about what you've seen out of Democrats in those congressional hearings last week, from Maxine Waters to the defense of Ilhan Omar being thrown off the Foreign Relations Committee? I feel like Democrats in Congress are, at least in the House so far, I saw a lot of those clips last week and shared them here, were really effective. Maxine Waters was very effective when they were asking her to denounce all these bad people. And she's like, denounce Trump, bitch. And I mean, I've been pretty impressed by I was also impressed by their defense of Ilhan Omar. What do you think of the performance of Democrats? Are they doing a little bit more of what you're saying Biden should be doing? Do you think they need to be doing something different.
I was going to write a piece on this, but enough people wrote it. I felt like that defense of Ilhan Omar came like several years late, and they were finally forced to defend Ilhan Omar because they also kicked off Schiff and Swalwell, the whites. And I'm like, well, now you guys are understanding, right? You have to stand up for your squad. You can't throw them under the bus. When I interviewed Ilhan Omar, she openly said that they rarely come to my defense, right? Like Chuck Schumer threw me under the bus in front of AIPAC, right? Like she literally has been hazed. And Democrats, unlike Republicans, they just gladly throw the squad under the bus. Look at Kevin McCarthy, man. Look at Mitch McConnell. They don't do that to their nuts and their extremists. They slightly, give themselves some space, but like even with George Santos, innocent until proven guilty. Oh, I'm sorry, Jorge Santos, the first man on the moon in drag. But with Ilhan Omar, because now they're coming after Schiff and Swalwell, I think now they're white folks, white Democrats, white liberals. Oh, now we have to actually align with the darkies and support the darkies, our base. If they would have done that a few years ago, it would have actually bolstered Ilhan Omar, people of color, who always pay attention, Pete, to whether or not the Democrats actually stand up for our representatives. Right? You don't have to even agree with Ilhan Omar, but the fact that they threw under the bus, I am telling you, black folks, black women, and Muslims paid attention to who stood up for her. Even the people who don't agree with her politics. Because by extension, what you represent is our communities. You want our vote, but you won't fight for us. You want our vote, but you'll throw us under the bus to court Chet and maybe get his vote, even though he won't vote for you, instead vote for Trump yet again. And I think enough people, like you said, Democrats are realizing, we can't take this vote for granted. We have to actually fight for her and defend her. AOC, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and others finally did that, and I was glad to see it.
Yeah, I was glad to see it too. I was really, though, and still am very upset that she was treated that way, based on, the comments that she'd made basically about the Israeli lobby, which is no different
than AIPAC,
than every other lobby. It's not just AIPAC; it's bigger than AIPAC. It's a huge lobby that advocates for Israel's interests, domestic and foreign. And there's a lobby, by the way, for people with disability. I just interviewed a woman who can explain that there's a lobby for everything. It's not that controversial. It's not anti-Semitic. And we can talk about her comments. But I was just really upset because I guess I didn't really realize Ilhan Omar's autobiography. I didn't realize that she was, part of this of a conflict, of a Somali, civil unrest. And I realized horrible situations that she saw. And I thought to myself, who better than this woman to be on such a committee or in Congress or to explain
the first committee.
Yes. And she's just like the perfect person to be on that. And they threw her off, yet leaving other virulent anti-Semites on.
That's what's
and
so.
Every Jewish, congressman voted to support her. It was ridiculous.
The projection and the hypocrisy is what's so galling, right? Because the stated reason for kicking her off was because she was so anti-Semitic, allegedly, and so hurtful to Israel. Oh, but by the way, we still support Donald Trump, who is consistently anti-Semitic, but the media doesn't cover it. Oh, by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we love her. She's the president and future of the GOP, even though she and Paul Gosar, who, by the way, also is now sitting on the Oversight Committee, literally spoke at a white supremacist rally, Nick Fuentes, who has been condemned by the EDL as one of the young leaders of anti-Semitism and white nationalism. And by the way, we also promote the replacement theory, an anti-Semitic theory that has a radicalized terrorists to commit violence against Jews in America. But oh my God, Ilhan Omar, how dare you make that comment about AIPAC? We're going to kick you off. And if you don't hit them with it, if you don't tell the story, if you don't give the context, if you don't connect the dots, Americans won't know. That's the problem.
I'll let you go. Congratulations on the paperback of the book being out. I want to do a full interview on the book again soon because it's been a year since it came out, and it's one of the most thoughtful, funny things. One of the best things I read last year, that's for sure. And so we should talk about that. But thank you very much for joining me as always today. I love talking to you, and I've missed you.
Yeah, I know. I was like, did I piss off Pete? And I was thinking about you 2 days ago, and then all of a sudden, Charles Xavier Telepathy, you emailed me. I'm like, yes. But I do expect an LL Bean fleece from LL Bean.
Oh yeah, all those plugs to LL Bean, they should send you something. Has anybody
send you a free one?
You have a huge following on social media. Has anybody ever sent you anything free that you plugged, like after you plugged it, and they're like, "Oh, you like our stuff"?
I got sent a full box of Kerrygold butter because the Kerrygold thread that I started went viral, and they sent me an entire box, and I got the evil eye of like 30,000 people.
Speaking of entire boxes, you tweeted that you ate an entire box of boxes of Girl Scout cookies.
No, I saw a huge box filled with many boxes of Girl Scout cookies, and for some reason it ended up in my office. I did not put it in my office. So either A, my wife really loves me, or she's trying to kill me through sugar overdose. And you will appreciate my restraint. I took the box, put it in the kitchen, hid it, and then I tried to give as money as I could away to the neighbors' kids, and I'm trying to hide myself. If I don't see it, hopefully I'll forget. I'll be like T-Rex. As long as it's not in front of my face, it won't be a meal.
I'm at that point now, for sure, that when I walk through the grocery store, I just have to go, no. Nope, can't have it.
We're old men, man. We got to.
That's right. All right, bud. I much appreciate you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
See you next time. Later.
Yep.
All right, there he goes. Let him know that you heard him in the show. Come on, go over there to Twitter or pop him even an email and let him know that you heard him here on Stand Up at Wajahat Ali. Always great. I hope you appreciated that. I do have another conversation for you right now with another friend of mine who I've known for a long time. She has a column at the New York Daily News. She is a CNN contributor. You can see her almost every day there. She hosts CNN Unfiltered. She still identifies as a Republican. She's on the board of ANARA, which I mentioned earlier to you, this human rights and relief organization that operates out of Syria and Lebanon. You can find her on Twitter at secuppshow.com. Rather, that's her website, and on Twitter at secupp. Let's get it underway with my good friend S.E. Cupp right now.
And there she is, as promised, S.E. Cupp. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, as always.
I want to just up front talk about the horrific earthquake in Turkey and Syria, because you've been paying close attention to this as a member of the board of ANARA, which is a really great nonprofit that has been working to help children who have been caught in the war in Syria. How am I doing explaining the nonprofit? But of course, they are now subject to this horrific disaster as well.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right. ANARA has been working in Syria and out of Lebanon and Turkey to help victims of the Syrian war, also victims in Lebanon and Yemen of other conflicts and conflict zones, getting them life-saving medical care. And listen, we have a tough time doing that without a natural disaster like this. Luckily, all of our aid workers are accounted for, but many are displaced. One of our aid workers is living out of his car in a field. And I'll just, in case you don't know sort of the latitude of where Syria is, it's cold there now. It's freezing. It's snowing in parts of northwest Syria where this happened. So all the people, thousands of people without homes who were lucky enough to survive are out in the cold. And Turkey is really good at providing aid. And in Assad-controlled parts of Syria, they're getting aid. But in the rebel-held parts of Syria, they're not allowing aid to get through. So they're punishing the resistors of Assad's brutal war by withholding aid. So it's an awful, awful situation in a place where awful situations have been the norm for over 10 years now. So if you feel like helping kids, we're going to be mobilizing our aid relief as soon as we, hear where we can best do it. You can donate at anara.org and we'll make sure that as many kiddos as we can afford get medical care.
Amazing organization, and I'm so happy that you're on the board there, and I really appreciate you talking about the work that they're doing. And I guess, it's so cliche at this point, but this is the most natural of disasters, I suppose, earthquake. And obviously the earthquake's effect on Northern California versus Haiti or Syria or Turkey, it's different because of how buildings are built, right, how people live. And then, of course, things like you mentioned about it's hard to get to some places and in some cases because it's even political. They don't want you to get there. So when do we look away from this? Probably already have. Yet this is the worst earthquake to affect the region and one of the worst earthquakes ever. And we're going to see the death toll probably exceed 10,000 and maybe more. I'm just guessing. I haven't even heard anybody say that, so I'm happy to be wrong. But the point being, we will look away from it, but this will be a generational issue. This earthquake will have caused problems for generations and for a generation of people. And so it's important that we don't, is all I'm trying to say. But
yeah, you're absolutely right about all of that. We'll definitely look away because with an earthquake, right, there's a feeling like, well, what could I have done? Nothing. I mean, an earthquake was going to happen. But I can tell you with the conflict, with the war that's gone on for over a decade, there was stuff, we could do. And we still looked away, even when, we could have played a role in preventing worse atrocities. And so, yeah, we'll look away. But you're right to say that what has happened because of this earthquake, the refugee crisis it will create, the economic crisis it will create, the political crisis it will exacerbate, that stuff will go on for years and decades.
Speaking of atrocities, hard to shift gears, but I want to ask you, as always, about your recent columns and several different things. So I don't need segues, folks. So moving on and other weird phrases you say to get to a different subject. Atrocities. Hurricane Santos. I'm referring to Congressman George Santos. I guess it's breaking news. I'm looking at your Twitter feed that Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, has revealed that he's facing a House probe. I don't know what that means. I don't know how many investigations he's facing. I do know that I haven't heard nearly enough about the fact that an aide accused him of grabbing his crotch in his congressional office, like the 25th of January, meaning all these other lies that he had told. They're investigating those journalists and others, but he just is accused of doing this. And I feel like I'm not hearing enough. I mean, just when you think, I hadn't seen him be accused of sexual assault. Now, as a congressman, not even before his what do we say? You wrote about this guy. I can't believe he's still there, Essie.
I can't either, and yet I can. Like I said in my most recent piece, we elected a known liar, president of the United States. We knew he was a liar. Even his supporters knew he was a liar. We knew he was, accused credibly multiple times of sexual assault. He admitted to grabbing women. We elected him anyway. I say we ecumenically. I didn't. But, so the idea that we'd allow a known liar to go into Congress because we really want to keep that seat Republican, I mean, it almost doesn't shock me. What does shock me is the cartoonish volume of his lies. I mean, he's lying about everything from like being on an episode of Hannah Montana to being a producer on Broadway's Spider-Man he's literally been everywhere and everything. And it's absurd at this point, but I hope the absurdity doesn't distract from the fact that there is a sociopathic liar in Congress today. And I don't know much more about the House probe. I just saw the breaking news alert myself. But I hope this means that Republicans are finally taking an interest in the George Santos saga.
Well, I mean, it's not, he's really hurting them because you can constantly mention him, as we saw in hearings last week. Democrats constantly brought him up in relation to almost anything they were talking about.
Wouldn't you? Of course you would.
Yeah.
Of course you would.
So, yeah, you make such a great point. I didn't even think of that. Americans, why would we be so upset? Why would the same people be so upset that Santos assaulted his aide last week when they literally voted for a man after he admitted to assaulting women and you knew that he did?
All of this was known. Embellishing your resume, Donald Trump. Fabricating parts of your life, Donald Trump. Donald Trump impersonated other people on the phone while a businessman. I mean, this is, the guy we elected president, highest office in the land, right? So of course we're going to elect some no name, to the 3rd district of New York for Congress and just kind of look the other way, of course.
Yeah, you wrote this great piece. Republican liars go far beyond George Santos. And, in fairness, he comes from a great tradition of New York liars, you write, including Anthony Weiner and Elliot Spitzer, to the con artists to end all con artists, former President Donald Trump. So, lying doesn't have a partisan preference, although I would maybe argue that at this point, certain voters would not elect someone knowing that they have committed certain crimes. At least that I can say about most Democratic voters.
I'm a Republican, but I'm so offended by the presence of George Santos and the elevation of George Santos. I tweet about him constantly. I'm not letting this story go.
Good.
I want every little development to, reach as many people as possible. So you don't forget that there's a lying liar face in Congress who has not been held accountable for all his lies.
Do you think it would be appropriate for a Hill reporter to walk up to him, as they have been with microphones, and saying, "Sir, are you, as Cupp has said, you are a lying liar face?
Liar face.
Is that true?"
Mm-hmm. How do you respond?
How do you respond to? He keeps saying, "This is not how an interview is conducted." And I want the reporter to be like, "I'm not conducting an interview. I'm just trying to get you on the record so I can file my report."
I'd even be okay if they were like, "I just want to dunk on you. I just want to make fun of you. I'm not interviewing you. I just want to make fun of you." Like, I'd actually be okay with that.
What do you make of Chinese spy balloon gate and how the Biden administration handled it? And the media's attention to it and any other...
Thank you. That last part, the media's attention to it. I cannot. The idea that Biden did something wrong here is entirely an invention of the Fox and Friends weekend crew, right? Sitting together, what do we say about the balloon? We got to find something to be mad at and outraged by. He should shoot it down sooner. Why didn't he? It's so stupid. Biden checked with his advisors. He did all the things you want, a sentient, rational, not impetuous person to do. He waited until it wasn't going to kill people underneath it by shooting it down. Did that. That was good. That was right. And I hate that the media is now making this fake narrative true by asking Democrats, well, shouldn't Biden have known sooner or done something sooner, just to both sides, or pretend to be unbiased. This is so stupid and obvious. And I hate that we are playing into this invented outrage, this invented storyline.
All right, then let's be done with it.
Okay, good.
Other than the media's critique, I'm sure there's going to be congressional investigations into it.
I have no doubt. Did you see? I think I tweeted about this too just now. Did you see Tim Scott, Republican senator from South Carolina, told Brian Kilmeade over on Fox, he will not applaud if Joe Biden brings up the fact that he shot down the balloon tonight at the State of the Union. That's your taxpayer dollar at work.
Why would he? First of all, do you think Biden's going to be like, I gave the order to shoot down the Chinese spy? I don't think that he would even do that, simply because it only exacerbates relationship with China. It's just not a smart diplomatic move probably at this point to dunk on that. Who wouldn't? Anyway, I bet he doesn't say anything, but why would he not applaud? Why would he not agree with that?
Oh, because partisanship. I mean, it's so stupid. We had balloons over the United States under Trump. No one seemed to care. No one talked about it.
Yeah.
But they've got to find something stupid to be mad about instead of real stuff. I mean, there's real stuff they could be mad about. They got to find the stupidest stuff to rally the stupidest of people.
Well, the State of the Union is tonight, but by the time anybody hears this conversation, most likely it will have happened. And so no sense, I guess, in speculating about it right now. And we'll know soon enough. But what do you think of the state? Do you have any thoughts about the tradition?
Oh, I hate it. I think before there was television and radio and social media, it was probably a good idea that the president addressed the country and told people what was going on once a year. But we hear from our elected officials so often, and we know so much, which is great. I'm not booing that. That's awesome. This just feels performative, and I don't think you ever learn anything new. People lie down red markers, red lines that they have to live up to, which is dumb, because this is just a rhetorical exercise. There's nothing codified in the State of the Union. So it's just, I don't think it does any president favors. I don't think it ever serves a president well. It can only it can only set you up for some failures.
Can you imagine, by the way, I've always joked about this and thought it's hilarious. Can you imagine, Essie, if during your appearances on CNN, there was me over your shoulder disagreeing and judging you in behind you? I mean, with the State of the Union having, stinky. She literally I think she farted. She's pooing. Wow. Yeah. Oh, bad. Real bad.
Like heckling me. That'd be awesome. That's what you're going to see, though.
I can't imagine. That. I mean, as a comedian, as any public speaking, like having someone over your shoulder with, in this case, it'll be Biden and Kevin McCarthy, who it'll be interesting if we can see him because he's so transparent. He's hollow. So I don't even know if we'll be able to see him. Okay. So then I want to talk to you about your piece at The Daily News, where you're a contributing columnist, about the anti-vaxxers and how they keep going lower. I'm super concerned about this issue, and I have been for years, because I've always been on the conspiracy theory beat, saying that it was a bigger problem than people gave it credit for, and that's partially because I worked in like call-in talk radio. So you know as much as anybody does how you're kind of on the tip of the spear with hearing from people, and people say, well, those people are fringe. They're not. It's going to literally potentially divide the race for the Republican nomination on who hates vaccines more. So it's right front and center in the presidential race. Vaccines and the future of vaccines. What's going on with the anti-vaccine movement?
Yeah, it does seem to be, Trump and DeSantis seem to be laying that marker down, right? To, draw a distinction or outdo each other or vie for those voters that probably used to be fringe are definitely not anymore. And they're not anymore because right-wing media and Republican leaders, and of course, Donald Trump, gave them comfort and said, no, you might be right. That conspiracy theory might have some validity. That was super dangerous because then now they're out of the shadows. There's no more shame attached to these weird, kooky beliefs. You can be out in public and get friends in Congress, friends, in real life that agree with you and tell you, no, that could be true. And the lying liar faces who are telling you otherwise just hate you and don't get you. And we get you. And Donald Trump, I get you because Pizzagate or because, whatever the QAnon conspiracy theory is. So the permission that these people have gotten to feel like this is normal, these are normal thoughts, and we should edify and we should placate these and we should consider them. No, we shouldn't. And the problem is it's now seeping into other non-political areas, vaccines being one. Anytime now someone gets injured or unfortunately dies, who's young, these people come out and say, well, they were probably vaccinated. Doesn't have to be true. Like literally doesn't have to be true that they were vaccinated. And it doesn't have to be true that, vaccines don't have this impact. Vaccines don't cause heart attacks in Buffalo Bills players. But it doesn't matter because stoking the fear is the important part. And, giving rise to these factions is the important part, not the truth.
Yeah. I mean, at what's her name's funeral, I think it was Diamond. One of the women, I think the one who died was concerned that people who are vaccinated are somehow affecting those who aren't, like they're shedding their vaccine, which is, that's a thing that some people believe. A lot of people, unfortunately, potentially.
Well, and I documented this toward the beginning of COVID, when you had a lot of right-wing radio hosts and a lot of evangelical, televangelists or evangelical radio hosts refusing to get vaccinated, refusing to social distance or whatever the protocols were at the time, and dying.
Yeah.
Dying. So, I mean, it's junk science, it's garbage, but it's also really, really dangerous when these kinds of ideas infect hive mind, which is what happens.
And it's just, I mean, Tucker Carlson is on it. Like, he's repeating it over and over. I mean, it's just so important. It's like, I don't know, we could talk about this as a wider subject in terms of media, but he's the most watched hour in cable news, if I'm not mistaken, like every night. So it's not some guy on the overnight shift yelling on terrestrial radio or even a huge YouTuber. This is, and plenty of them are, and there's no guidelines and there's no one standing in his way. Apparently last night he had like a medical student on because he couldn't find a doctor to say what he wanted to say or something. Yeah. I mean, what do you say about the danger that a guy like him or others that are the most watched?
Or Joe Rogan. I mean, there are some people with very big platforms making some very irresponsible claims and feeding into completely nonsensical conspiracy theories. Now, some of that, is corrosive because it might make you an outcast in your family. You lose your friends, you lose your job. Maybe you forked over a lot of money, to grifters. It can also result in like a guy going after Paul Pelosi at his house because he believes in conspiracy theories like replacement theory and all this nonsense that gets just thrown out there in places like Fox and YouTube platforms and TikTok. And it doesn't even matter that like Fox News' own lawyers say that Tucker Carlson is entertainment and not like factual. Doesn't matter. People watching don't care, don't know that, don't want to believe it. They will believe what Tucker says, period. When you have that big a platform, I think you need to be that much more responsible with it. And the irresponsibility it's just wild.
Speaking of irresponsibility, did you see that Lauren Boebert basically said she's praying for Joe Biden to die?
Yeah. This is what bothers me about the other media story that you're going to hear all day today. Should Biden be conciliatory in his speech so that Republicans don't get upset? First of all, he could spend the entire hour praising Republicans. They'd still be upset. They'd still call him divisive. There's no concession that's going to prevent that from being the story from the right. So dispatch with that. But then, you have people like Lauren Boebert openly saying she hopes Joe Biden dies, kind of. You have other members of Congress wishing the worst on Democrats, tweeting out videos of them being executed, refusing to apologize or take them down. This is not a group of people you need to worry about hurting their feelings. Okay? If I'm Biden, I wouldn't care about that at all. I would call out extremism because that's the correct word for it. I'd call out fascism when that is the correct word for it. And sure, you can say this isn't all Republicans, but there's a wing of this party that is dangerous, crazy, extremist, and fascist. And that's what I'm fighting against. Period.
Oh, I love it. I love it, what you just said. And I am going to share that with everybody as a clip because it was just important.
I'm not running for president, so it doesn't matter.
I know, but we can not speculate about the State of the Union because it's going to happen. But I'm glad that you said that because we are going to hear that conversation all day and tomorrow. And when we've heard it a lot before, and I just think you executed that perfectly because that's the analysis that I think is, I certainly agree with. Okay. What about your article, The Daily News, about Republican voters? Moving on from Trump and his voters is the title. You, like a lot of us, read the great McKay Coppins piece in The Atlantic, and he has a lot of really interesting sources in there. Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are on the Republican Party, if any, how they can move away from this guy and how privately they're telling McKay and others, we wish he would die. Speaking of wishing people to die, we wish he would just go away. There's no way he will go away. We have to answer for his nonsense every day.
Well, and wishing he would die, but also believing that his death might be the only way we can move beyond Trump. Right. And that might be true. I loved McKay's piece. I just took it kind of to one more step, which was to say, okay, the hand wringing over how to get past Trump is one thing, and that's healthy. I'd rather Republicans be asking themselves that question than still clinging to him. But they never get to the end, the logical conclusion of that, which is you have to be willing to deny his voters. You have to be willing to say, QAnon, we don't want you. White supremacists and nationalists, we're not your party. You're not going to find comfort here anymore. Republicans have been unwilling to do that because Trump let them all in. And so to keep those voters happy, Republicans abandoned like good conservatism and good conservatives like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney to keep these people happy. The white supremacists, the nationalists, the anti-Semites, the QAnon, the conspiracy theorists. Those are the people they contorted to keep inside the party until they're willing to tell those voters, we don't want you, and we might lose elections without you, but we'd rather be cleansed of that awful element than win more elections. Until that happens, you're not going to get past Trump, because Trumpism will survive long after Trump is gone. Trump hasn't been in the White House for years. Trumpism is alive and well.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to be willing to do the thing that politicians are never willing to do, which is lose some elections.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you also just talk about until leadership, Republican leadership at every level of leadership is willing to leave Trump, then their voters and their corrosive impulses behind, conservatism will remain in a coma, you say. And the question whether Trump is past, present, or future will remain unanswered. I just also think, of course, it's always the right-wing talkers who you know better than anybody, and their influence on those Republican leaders at every level. You know, it's like my town supervisor is copying Trump. It happens everywhere, but as a result of the people that get fired up over media. You know, I mean, it's right-wing media at this point is just constantly getting ratings and making money off of you name it.
It's true. And because when we're talking about willing to, leave voters behind, you have to be willing to leave viewers behind too. And that's also a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I will say I've seen, not enough courage, but like Newsmax, won't have Lara Logan on anymore. Now, Lara Logan's like at the bottom of the barrel with her anti-Semitic, vile conspiracy theories. But at least there was a line, right? At least, and Fox fired her too. At least there was a line that was too far. Maybe that's, I guess, a silver lining.
Yeah, where the line is for Newsmax or anybody else is always movable. And
it's Lara Logan. Lara Logan's the line.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure a lot of women and black folks would be like, how come the line isn't sexism and racism? How come it's anti-Semitism? Or if believe me, I know. But here's where we're at, right? Yeah.
God.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time as always. It's great catching up with you. Anything else that we need to talk about or plug? How is your, how's your Instagram? How's your travel life? How's your family? I love seeing your pictures on Instagram. I was telling you about my daughters, and women and posting, and it's just also fraught, it seems. But you continue to, you're never afraid. You put it out there no matter what people think. And I love that, especially your fashion stuff.
I do, and I don't care, but that doesn't mean I don't get backlash. Like, I remember a year or two ago, I posted a picture. I was in an outfit, okay? I was completely clothed, but it was like a sexy outfit. And an older woman who is a colleague, who is a well-known writer, posted, "No wonder women aren't taken seriously in news." And I thought, girl, first of all, you're in the wrong century. We don't do that anymore. Secondly, this is what you have time for, commenting on my Instagram posts. Thirdly, I don't have any trouble being taken seriously. I promise. I promise you that. But it was like, Jesus. So it's not just coming from trolls.
Right. How come you didn't,
an anonymous haters. Sometimes it's coming from your own female colleagues.
You didn't want to name her then or now?
You can go to my Instagram and see who it is. I'm not going to give her any oxygen here, but It's not a secret.
Thank you for that bonus addendum. I liked it very much, and it matters. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.
All right. It is a funny ending. All right. SE Cupp, everybody. Hopefully you appreciated and got a lot out of that conversation as well as the one with Wajahat Ali before that. I can't thank you enough for spending an hour and almost 10 minutes with me here today, and I can't do it without your support. This podcast is free technically, but it costs a lot of resources. I've got a great intern, Odessa, joining me now, and I can't do it without your paid subscription because I'm here every day with great new guests, usually 2, sometimes 1, usually at least an hour, sometimes 2. So I can't thank you enough for supporting the show, for listening to the show, for telling your friends about the show, for reviewing and giving stars to the show on Spotify, on iTunes, and go subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/standuppete, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to see more of these video clips that we're putting out of the interviews, and I guess that's it. Thank you very much for everything. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you right here tomorrow on Stand Up.